When is too much and enough actually going to be too much and enough when it comes to the exploding, unbelievable rates of autism we are dealing with right now? 1 in 36 kids, and that's actually a few years outdated. The trends are going in the wrong direction. In the next couple of years, it'll be more than 1 in 36 children diagnosed with autism, and that is up dramatically, exponentially from just a generation or two ago when it was 1 in 1,500. Now, when we look at the what's called incident rate of any disease, we have to look at all the factors that are involved. And for autism, it is not enough anymore at all to continue to just blame genetics. That's what's been going on for far too long in mainstream conventional medicine, while they continue to put their head in the sand and say, we don't know what's going on. It's definitely genetic though. What you're going to see in this video, and we'll link here below an article that breaks this question down. Hey, is autism genetic, or is there actually more going on? There is. The genetic predetermined or kind of predisposed, sorry, I said the exact wrong word there. Autism is not a genetic predetermined disease. Autism has some little bits of genetic predisposition, but it is primarily an environmental and multifactorial disease of environmental triggers and stressors and toxicity that affect our children's development early and often. And so in today's world, you'll see kind of the conventional media and conventional medical system finally admitting, oh, you know what? It's a mix. It's a combination of genetic challenges and environmental influences, but they never ever open the hood to what those environmental triggers actually are, and tell parents the truth and put this scientific story, if you will, together to really explain why the rates of autism are dramatically, significantly on the rise. Because we know that it takes thousands of years and multitudes of generations to change something this significantly. And we also know that we're not just diagnosing it better, because that isn't near enough to explain this explosive rate of autism. So if your child has received a diagnosis of autism, or someone you love has, you know that the first question always when our kids are sick, and especially when they're struggling with autism, which is multifactorial, what we kind of call a multi-systems disease, where their gut's a mess, their immune system's a mess, their motor system's a mess, gross and fine motor, their speech, socialization, sensory processing disorders are all a mess, and their behavior and their emotional dysregulation. The list is long of things that children with autism struggle with. So when we ask the question, why is this happening? What's causing it? It's actually a pretty long list of factors as well. But the one thing I will tell you, parents, you're going to learn in this video and all of our content about what we call the perfect storm is that there is exactly that. There's a sequence of stressors and toxicity that goes in a specific order early and often in a child's life. That is what you really need to understand to fully understand what's really causing, what's really triggering autism spectrum disorders, sensory challenges, and all the things that come with it. So parents, care providers, this is for you. If you've long asked this question, been up late at night, searching, scrolling, praying, looking for answers, and I hope you understand, I know I'm not trying to be over the top and annoying, but the answers are plural. There is a multitude of things we need to figure out with this, but here's the good news. There is one system called the nervous system, the central or autonomic nervous system, which we're about to nerd out and really teach you all about here in this video, that will explain how all of the challenges your child with autism, all the multi-system challenges, they're all tied to that one master air traffic control system. And we'll introduce this through what we call our perfect storm model or concept, which says two things. Hey, here's the sequence of stressors and toxicity that a child went through to get stuck into the storm. And then second, here's the neurophysiological or kind of neurological dysfunctions that come from that storm, come from those perfect storm triggers, and what they're actually doing to the brain and the body. And then we'll get to the final thing of this video. Hang with us all the way through, because the information is life-changing. You're going to finally make sense of, is autism genetic? No. Is it primarily environmental? Yes. But what environmental triggers? What matters most? We're going right into those things with this video. But most importantly, we're going right into those things with this video, but most importantly, we're going into the drug-free action steps and care options you need for your kiddo to really fully, entirely address the root neurological dysfunction and root causes of autism and all its related challenges. I'll never forget one of the first kiddos, young kiddos I saw with autism. I'll never forget the conversation with Evan's parents early on in my career. I was just 3 years into being a neurologically focused pediatric chiropractor, and I had been studying and putting together this research science concept called the perfect storm that whole 3 years. I had actually first started working with kids who were 17, 18, 19, 21, who had been diagnosed with Asperger's and autism spectrum disorders, and were on a multitude of meds, and all the things that those parents had tried had failed, and those kids started to get better. Older kids struggling for 2 decades with these neurological challenges, those kids started to get better with the adjustments and the care that we provided. So I wanted to get this intervention, if you will, earlier to kids going into this autism perfect storm. So I got to talk with Jeff and Julie, Evan's parents, shortly after they had gone through, which pretty much every family whose child struggles with autism has to go through at age 3 and around that time. They had gone through a full neuropsych evaluation for Evan. Now, that's a whole nother conversation for another day, why a neuropsychiatrist would do an evaluation for autism. Medicine has mistakenly, for now 70 plus years, called autism a psychiatric disorder. It's a brain-based neurological disorder, but it's the body having all sorts of neurobiological dysfunction and disruption that then feeds this storm and this disorganization into the brain. So it looks like a brain-based challenge, but it's actually primarily a body-based challenge. So go to our website, read more about autism. We have tons of articles on there, not just about this conversation, is autism genetic, but about those components too, because it's not a psychiatric condition. It's a neurophysiological, biological condition that ends up affecting behavior, emotional regulation, socialization. So back on track with Evan's story, what his parents were told is, we don't know what causes it. It's just genetic. And so when they asked, hey, he had a really traumatic birth and was really stressed as a little one and really colicky and constipated and had all sorts of neuroimmune challenges and bad reactions at certain doctor's visits. Did any or all of that have anything to do with this? No, they were dismissed. That doesn't matter. Traumatic birth, no big deal. Adverse reactions, no big deal. Constantly inflamed, constipated, can't sleep, colicky, no big deal. They just, we don't know. Then they asked, hey, what about doing diet changes, detoxes? He seems to have a huge gut and immune dysfunction. Should we address that and clean up his diet, reduce sugar, add in omega-3s? Would that help? And by the medical expert on autism, have to do it that way, they said, no, none of that's going to help. Diet changes have not been proven to help at all. So on down the list, they went with their questions, and again, the expert dismissed them. The expert said they don't have anything to do with this because it's purely genetic. Now, this is going to be a long video by the time we're done, because this is a very easy question for me to answer because the research and our clinical experience is so obvious and so there, but it's a hard question because our conventional medical system, like this doctor. Now, this just flash forward to the good of the story. That kiddo found our care. Everything I'm about to teach you and walk you through to do, they did it. He got incredibly better. Full recovery. He's thriving. He's in high school. All is good for Evan. But what's crazy is, even though that is now 10, 12, 13 years in the past, I get the same story from parents still today when they ask questions of their pediatrician, just like Jeff and Julie did, when they ask questions of the neuropsych evaluation and the whole, neurological expert team. Hey, what's really causing this? Kid, if we did this, would it help? If we did that, would it help? And it's all dismissed, and they still blame just genetics. And so this is a time in healthcare where we need to do better. It's not okay that this many kiddos are struggling that much with autism. And to me, it's really also not even close to okay that you as parents don't get the full answers and the full explanations as to the science truly actually behind autism and linking it all together. So let's go there next. That answered for too many of you, keep you up late at night question. What's really causing autism. Now, I'd actually have to keep going for about 12 to 20 hours to teach you all the things with autism, but I want to break it down into, again, what we mentioned before, this simple term called the perfect storm. What we figured out a long time ago is that there's a little bit of genetic predisposition, but really there's a huge, massive primary influence to autism from environmental stressors, trauma, and toxicity. And that order is actually what makes up what we call the perfect storm, which has, again, hundreds of things into it when you really get down granular, but it primarily has these three things. Number one, we see a much higher incidence of autism when a developing baby, so during the pregnancy and prenatal period, if that was high risk, high stress, high inflammation, high anxiety for mom and her neurophysiological system, well, that umbilical cord brings in not only oxygen and nutrients to the baby's developing system, but that umbilical cord is the power cord or the electrical neurological connection from mom's nervous system to babies. So in this crazy world where we now diagnose moms with pregnancy, we scare the ever-living heck out of them and we put them into a perfect storm of sympathetic fight or flight dominance, we now know that that very much increases the risk of a child struggling with neurological challenges like autism later on, because it shifts the baby's nervous system into more of a sympathetic fight or flight. And in the same breath, same thing, other side of the coin, it actually shuts down the development of what's called the vagus nerve or the parasympathetic, calming, regulating, digesting, social emotional side of the nervous system. So if we look at autism, the 5 to 7 things that kids with autism primarily struggle with, they are functions that the parasympathetic vagus nerve is supposed to control. So that's where the second element or second ingredient of this perfect storm sequence comes in. After a stressful pregnancy, there is so often a physically traumatic and upper neck brainstem right where the vagus nerve starts, branches, and comes down through the neck to do its job. That area is physically, traumatically injured, very often with birth interventions like forceps, vacuum, induction, C-section, cord-wrapped, manual assistance. So first, there's the emotional trauma during pregnancy. Second, there's physical trauma during birth interventions, and we would just flat out call that birth trauma. And the research is very clear, connecting this to autism and other neurological challenges. And then the third component, simplifying it down to 3 of the perfect storm, is early exposure to toxins, especially things like antibiotics, steroid-based medications through inhalers and those sort of things. Different toxins that are put into a child's body, whether inhaled, ingested, or injected, create inflammation within the gut, within the immune system, and the gut and the brain are connected via the vagus nerve. Now, I know we're thick into a very nerdy neurological conversation about autism, but we need to go there to fully, not just, in the cloud, simply answer the question, is autism genetic? We have to answer with what it really is. And it's these factors, also things that play are EMFs, different toxins in our environment that come in through cleaners and detergents and all sorts of things. Our world is highly stressful. Our birth intervention, labor and delivery, C-section rates have quadrupled in many hospitals just in the last two generations, which just so happens to combine and go right in lock and step with the dramatic rise in autism and other conditions like it. And then we throw in toxins and gluten and dairy and all of these things. But I need you to hear this part, parents. You might have already learned about the toxins component. You might have already learned about gluten and dairy and sugar and chemicals, and you may already have your child on a perfectly awesome, clean diet. You maybe have already taken out of the preservatives and the chemicals in your lifestyle everywhere. You may have already tried to detox and get your child's gut to heal. But if we go back and we recap that perfect storm neurophysiological dysfunction sequence one more time, the toxins show up last. The reactions show up third. There's 2 things that affect the nervous system first and move it into what we call this sympathetic dominant subluxated state. So those environmental factors, those are the ones that matter most, But no matter which kind of stressor your child goes through, it does the same thing to the nervous system. All right, so now that we know these perfect storm triggers show up early and often in a child's life, the last thing to figure out is exactly what they do to your child's nervous system. Those stressors, because they are coming into your child's life so early, before a child's resilience or what we call adaptability and protective response is very much built up at all, it serves as a tipping point to shift the nervous system into what's called a sustained sympathetic fight or flight overdrive mode. Now, that sympathetic fight or flight protective mode, which looks like colic in an infant, tantrums and meltdowns in a toddler that you're told, oh, don't worry, they'll grow out of it. They don't grow out of those things. They grow into autism and other challenges. But that sympathetic fight or flight storm, there's two terms I want to introduce, and we'll link below how you can learn more about these very important terms to this conversation, called subluxation and dysautonomia. Now, dysautonomia is the term that means the whole autonomic nervous system shifts out of balance. We end up with too much gas pedal, too much fight or flight. That's a child who is constantly wound up, constantly stimming, constantly struggling to fall asleep. And when you have too much gas pedal, you have too little brake pedal. So they can't rest, they can't digest, they can't regulate, they can't social and emotionally connect. And that's the side of the nervous system that gets shut down when the sympathetic fight or flight system is excessively turned on. And guess which nerve primarily controls the parasympathetic rest, regulation, socialization, behavioral and emotional, just connection side of the nervous system? The vagus nerve and the parasympathetic system. So the perfect storm shifts the nervous system into this subluxated, sympathetic dominant dysautonomia state. And those are the things that I want to leave you with, parents, on the hunt to learn more about next. This video, even though I went full kind of TED Talk style at 20 minutes into it, this video is really just an introduction to the entire answer that is the perfect storm that I know you've been searching for. I know you've asked your traditional doctor and all the specialists for these answers, and you've gotten either none of it or only little parts of it. And I know you've went onto Google. I know you've went on Instagram and into a zillion Facebook groups looking for these answers. So I want you to keep learning more. Follow the links we put below or in our bio. Go to our podcast, the Experience Miracles podcast. Find the episodes that talk about the perfect storm, birth trauma, and our autism deep dive episode. No matter how you love to learn, whether you love to read articles, they can be found on pxdocs.com and with the links below and in the bio. If you love to learn via audio, go to the Experience Miracles podcast. And if you just know you're ready to talk to a doctor and to talk to our team or one of the pxdocs care team all around the world, we have trained doctors, nervous system focused doctors who are not only ready to explain these things to you, but I told you earlier, I would leave you with the action steps. And that's what it is. You need to get connected to a doctor who knows not just the truth and not just the story, if you will, of the perfect storm, subluxation and dysautonomia, but knows how to find it and knows how to fix it. Now, I'm an Iowa farm kid originally. And so when I say the word fix it, here's the last thing I want to explain with this video. We don't treat and we don't cure autism with neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic care. We address the root causes. So when I say fix it, I mean, let's get the nervous system out of that sympathetic fight or flight storm. There are specific adjusting protocols that are gentle, safe, fast, and easy that sensory spectrum kids love to receive because it finally calms the storm and the noise that is trapped in their body and trapped in their brain. So the first layer of our adjustments are what we call the release phase of care, where we get that sympathetic fight or flight stress response to let go, to calm down, to turn down. The way we really access that system and calm the sympathetic storm is we know exactly how to stimulate the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. So as you continue your journey, learning more about this perfect storm, subluxation, dysautonomia, and neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic care, when you go to the website, you can learn more about exactly how our clinical process and these adjustments work. And I'll tell you this, autism is a multifactorial multi-systems challenge. So you need a doctor who knows this and knows how to address every single component of it. The only doctors out there who do that are those that focus on the central and autonomic nervous system. There's only one system that controls and modulates all the other systems, and that's the nervous system. So moving that nervous system focused chiropractic care to the front or kind of foundation of your care team will change everything for your child. Because when the nervous system relaxes, your child sleeps better, falls asleep and stays asleep. When the vagus nerve is activated, your child's digestive motility, absorption, and elimination, they poop better, is what I'm trying to say. When your child's vagus nerve and sympathetic storm are addressed, their immune system is less inflammatory, less wound up and ticked off all the time, and they get through colds way easier and get sick less often. The nervous system controls the motor tone and coordination. So hypertonicity and stemming can be calmed with the right kind of adjustments, whereas that weak, exhaustive core can be activated and stimulated with the right kind of adjustments. As I already have throughout this long video, I could go on and on and on, but it's essential, parents and care providers, that you get all of this science and all of this neurology and all of these drug-free action steps to get your child out of the storm and to the other side to optimal outcomes and the most incredible quality of life. We see it all day, every day, because we do not accept that autism is simply genetic, and we do not just simply say, oh, it's a bunch of environmental triggers that we don't yet fully understand. We do fully understand it. We've taken thousands of case histories, we've read all the research and connected all the dots, and now we're here to do that for you. Comment below, send us a DM with any further questions, follow the links to check out the articles, other videos, and the podcast, and please, last request, share the heck out of this video. So many families have their child locked into autism, and they're trying this and trying that, and they know that there must be something that ties it all together. This is that. Please give them the opportunity to learn and get these answers as well. Please share this in your Facebook groups, on your socials, group chats. I know you got them, Mom. Send this video far and wide. Thank you very much for diving in and leaning in with us. Again, questions, comments, send them on DM, put them below. We got you. You got this. We are always here to continue to deliver hope, answers, and drug-free help for your family.